Welcome back to Things You Don't Know, the show where we flush out the real issues that society loves to argue about. Today, we're diving headfirst, hopefully not literally, into the one of the most enduring household battles of all time. No, it's not about loading the dishwasher correctly or whether pineapple belongs on pizza. It's the toilet seat debate. Some say men should always put the seat down. Others argue, why can't everyone just close the lid? But what if I had told you that the entire premise of this argument is a little, well, not a little, it's sexist? Buckle up, or should I say seat down, because we're going there. Growing up in a home with six sisters, I was often scolded for not putting the seat down, as were my brothers. Once I was even punished because it's sort of humorous little thing. Once I was, as I say, I left the seat up, and one of my sisters, who was dressed to go to her prom, soiled her dress because of this horrible transgression that I did, causing a flurry of activity to get the dress somewhat cleaned and dried. It's interesting. I don't know, Dr. Deneen. I do know, because when I mentioned to you some time ago, if you had heard of the word misandry, and you told me what?
No, I hadn't.
Yeah. And what is that? Remember what we talked about?
It's the opposite of misogyny and anti-male viewpoint.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's not just anti-male viewpoint. It is sexist in an anti-male way. So anyhow,
For decades, if not centuries, men have been scolded for leaving the toilet seat up. It's like an unwritten rule of civilized society. Men lift the seat to do their business, and then they're supposed to lower it again. But why? Is it hygiene, convenience, or is it just another example of outdated, old fashioned gender expectations? Think about it. In a shared household, we all use the toilet and lift the seat, women put it down, refer it down, and yet only one side is expected to accommodate the other. Why?
indeed, why? Let's break this down logically. If fairness is the goal, shouldn't both sexes, both parties, if you will, contribute equally? Men lift the seat when needed, like, for example, to urinate for the most part, and then they put it back down. Women lower the seat when needed, which is to use the toilet in any fashion, and lift the lid when necessary. Why is only one side responsible for the reset? Let's talk about another issue, hygiene. Well, hygiene matters. Let's go all the way into that, though. If we're going to talk hygiene, then let's get real. If a man urinates in a toilet with the seat down, it is likely that urine or splashed urine with toilet water will get on the seat. However, the seat isn't the only issue. The lid should be closed too. Studies show that flushing with an open lid can cause bacteria to aerosolize into the air. You know what that means? Your toothbrush might be catching some free flying bacteria particles. If you remember an old show called Mythbusters, They showed the aerosolizing that happens when the toilet is flushed without the lid being closed. So, if you would rather not brush your teeth with toilet water or a urine with toilet water or fecal matter with toilet water, or if you don't want to dry your hands on a towel sprinkled with that same disgusting mixture, put the lid down. Put the lid down. No, it really is all about habit, not logic. Society has trained us to think that seat down is the default, but that's an arbitrary standard. If we flipped the script and told women they should lift the seat after every use, would that feel fair? Yeah, exactly.
Now, let's get into the real issue. Why is this debate even gendered? The expectation that men should always lower the seat assumes that the default toilet position should cater to women's needs. It also reinforces the idea that men are responsible for making things easier for women, even when the effort is literally a 2-second task that anyone can do. Let's be honest, women are just as capable of using their hands to move on a seat as men are. We're not talking about lifting weights at the gym. And yet, we've somehow turned this into an argument where men are seen as lazy if they don't comply. But is it lazy? Or are we just dealing with an outdated societal norm that never really made sense to begin with?
Let's also acknowledge the subtle implication here. Expecting men to adjust the seat every time reinforces traditional gender roles where men are tasked with fixing things for women. And if we're working towards equality, shouldn't we challenge those small, everyday habits that reinforce balance on both sides?
All right, everyone, hang on to your hats here. Let's take a quick detour into some spicy social territory. You ever notice how everyone knows what misogyny means, but almost no one talks about misandry? If you're unfamiliar, misogyny is the dislike of prejudice against women, and misandry is the dislike of prejudice against men. Yet while the former is widely and rightfully recognized, the latter is often met with blank stares or worse, dismissed as non existent. Why is that? Well, there's a few reasons. Misogyny has been studied and discussed extensively because for centuries, societies were predominantly male dominated. Women fought for rights, representation, and equality, and those fights are well documented. See our Elizabeth Graham podcast, our analysis of Marjorie Post, and many others. Misandry, on the other hand, was rarely seen as a systematic issue, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Right. And it is systemic, as you say. But why? Why is that? Now, I'm was always in favor of women's rights and treating women with equality. I participated in many demonstrations and etc. A firm supporter. But my support isn't just one sided. We say that men dominated the social system for a long time. It's true that on a public scale, yes. But even in ancient times, women subtly manipulated things at home so that it was sort of evened out in a sense. Now, I'm not suggesting lifting weights or doing other things like that nature. Men and women are different, and I say vive les différences. Okay. Yeah, there's a long history of depicting men as dominant, strong, and in control, while women were historically framed as needing protection. I say that's sexist on both accounts. When gender biases against men arise, either in the form of societal expectations, legal disparities, like custody battles, for example, or harmful stereotypes, for example, men don't show emotions, etc., or they don't have feelings, or they don't see all these other things. They don't get the same level of cultural attention at all. And the toilet seat debate is a great example. The expectation that men should always be the ones adjusting the seat isn't questioned, even though it places a small but real imbalance on one gender.
Society often tends to be more comfortable addressing issues that fit into familiar narratives. When someone talks about misogyny, it is rightfully taken seriously. When someone brings up misandry, it is often met with skepticism or jokes. And yet, look around. There are many double standards in everyday life. The expectation that men should be providers, that they should suppress emotions, or that they should sacrifice their own needs for others are all subtle forms of gender bias against men. I know as a person with an exceptionality, I found that I've been rightfully expected to really push myself to my maximum level of potential, and I'm grateful for that. But there's been an emotional price paid where in some cases, women with exceptionalities have been treated as very fragile. And that's a discrimination, assuming they're not as capable. Some of the finest people I know in my community are women who have accomplished great things against impossible odds.
So, what does all this have to do with toilet seats? Well, it's a microcosm of a bigger issue. If we want true gender equality, it starts with recognizing and addressing all unfair expectations, no matter who they affect. Should men be expected to lower the seat because it's polite? Or should we rethink these small ingrained behaviors and ask ourselves why we demand different things from different genders? Maybe, just maybe, the real solution isn't about who moves the seat. It's about recognizing that small, unquestioned social norms often carry deeper biases than we tend to realize. You know, men and women are different, as I said before. And I think that that's very important. And I would not expect that in general, that every woman would measure up in terms of physical strength and all those sorts of things with the general role of men. On the other hand, there are some women who would absolutely strong, get into traditionally male things. I think that's great. I think we need that. Absolutely. But before we wrap this up, let's talk about how culture plays a role in the great toilet seat debate. Because believe it or not, every country is locked in this battle of seat up versus seat down.
What amazes me is the differences in various countries around the world. In Japan, for example, many toilets are high-tech wonders, as with many other things the Japanese make, with automatic lids that close themselves. Problem solved. No one has to touch anything. Meanwhile, in parts of Europe, particularly in Germany, it's considered basic manners for everyone, regardless of gender, to close the lid. It's a hygiene thing, not a who should cater to whom thing. In China, there are differences. Most public restrooms have squat toilets. They're much more common, making this debate less relevant. In households with Western toilets, some families enforce the rules, but there is less social pressure around it as compared to Western countries.
Indeed, in Latin America, for example, due to the machismo influence, in some traditional households, men may not be expected to lower the seat, as domestic toilets are often assigned to women. In modern urban areas, changing gender norms mean more men are expected to be mindful of lowering the seat. Hygiene and religious practices in the Middle East and Muslim countries, for example, in those places, many cultures use bidets or water hoses instead of toilet paper, making the lid positioning somewhat less of a topic. In some households and public places, men and women may use separate bathrooms, minimizing the debate. It's really quite interesting.
If you want another interesting podcast, check out our toilet paper podcast. In places like Germany and the Netherlands, etiquette often dictates that both the seat and lid should be closed for hygienic reasons. Some public restrooms have gone so far to have signs reminding men to be considerate. In India, many homes, just like China, have squat toilets where the seat issue doesn't exist. But in urban areas where they're starting to get sitting toilets, there may be more discussion. Although it is not as widely debated or expected as in Western countries. On the other hand, in many Western countries, particularly the United States and United Kingdom, the argument tends to take on an odd gendered tone. Somewhere along the way, leaving the seat up became framed as a sign of patriarchy and male inconsideration, rather than just a neutral habit. But why? Well, that leads us to a much bigger question. And with that, friends, I say close the lid, close the debate, and open a conversation.
So, what's the real answer? It's really pretty simple. Just as you said, Dr. Deneen, everyone should just close the lid. It's more hygienic, it's more aesthetically pleasing, and best of all, it means neither gender has to worry about adjusting the seat to accommodate the other.
Think about it. No more arguments about the seat being up or down. This is good. No more accidental late night surprises when you sit down without checking. And best of all, no more airborne bacteria doing the cha-cha over your toothbrush. We also have a toothbrush podcast you might want to look at. And hey, if we could end this age-old battle, maybe, just maybe, we could move on to more important issues, like why people still squeeze the toothpaste tube from the middle.
Indeed. So there you have it. The toilet seat debate outdated. The solution: close the damn lid and move on. If you agree, disagree, or just want to share your own toilet related horror stories, hit us up on social media or leave a comment wherever you get your podcasts.
And remember, next time you hear someone complaining about the seat being left up, just ask them, why aren't we closing the lid instead?
Yeah, it is a very difficult habit for people to break. Toilet spray is real. Check out that Mythbusters episode if you get a chance. It's quite astounding to see the pieces of fecal matter, urine, and toilet water to just become airborne and spread. So if you want to dry yourself with a towel that's sprinkled with toilet water, and I don't mean the smell of the fragrant kind, I mean from the toilet, or you just like the flavor of fecal matter on your toothbrush, then by all means, leave the lid up and flush away. That's it for today's episode. So, if you, like I say, if you have some rants or some cultural thoughts about toilet seats, gender expectations, or why we never hear a bit about misandry, say something. And remember, let's at least agree on one thing: flushing with the lid open is just nasty.
I think that's beyond question. But give us a like, folks. Leave comments. We've got some really nice podcasts that have gone up lately about lost Japanese soldiers who kept fighting World War II, history of pens and pencils. We've got several interesting ones coming up, both on this site and on the History Twist site. So our academic engine here is taking off, and we hope you'll share the wonderful experience with us.
All righty. So for now, bye for now.
So long.